Oh my goodness, Andrew Tischler, are you going to let me paint yet another egg? Actually, yes, he does. Welcome to my studio and to this video in which I'm going to paint my fourth egg by now. Good news, this egg will not be gray values only, this will actually be an egg in color. Finally, I can move on to some color. And not just some color or some egg, I'm going to paint a Zorn egg. Now, you may have no clue what a Zorn egg is, and before I started this lesson, I had no clue what a Zorn egg was either, but we're actually going to paint a Zorn egg in this video. So I would say, if you want to discover what actually is a Zorn egg, then come along with me in this video. This is the egg from the last video. We're going to do a new egg again, but this time we're going to work in color and using the Zorn palette. Now the Zorn palette is named after Anders Leonard Zorn, and that is a Swedish painter and sculptor and etching artist who lived from, I think, 1816 till 1920. Well, here you see him in his younger days. He was quite an international successful painter. And this is one of his self-portraits, and that's what he was famous for, portraits and landscapes. He painted some famous people, and contrary to a lot of painters in his time, he was quite a wealthy painter and accumulated quite some wealth through his paintings. And he's worldwide famous for this thing called the Zorn palettes, which consist of a white, a black, a yellow ochre, and a vermilion, but Andrew uses a cadmium red, which I don't have. So I picked a Naphthol red medium instead, but I could have used the vermilion, which is a little bit lighter. And with this limited palette, we're going to paint a new egg in color, obviously. And as you can see, I'm using a different kind of paint. I'm using the Golden Open instead of the Sonja. And the reason is, with the Sonja, I don't have a yellow ochre. And I do have a real yellow ochre with the Golden Open. And I also just want to try these paints. You don't need a medium with these. These are slow drying acrylics, so you don't need that gel which I mix in with the other paint, with the Sonja. And I'm just very curious to these paints to see how these work, if they're quite different or not than the Sonja with the gel medium in it. So these paints dry very slow on their own, so you don't need to add anything to them. You can just put them on the palette and they'll stay open for quite a long time. There is a medium with that, which is some gloss, some glazing medium. I'm not going to use that, but I'm going to use this open thinner to make them a bit thinner when I need that, so that they flow nicer. Instead of adding water, I could do that too, but I'm going to use the thinner instead. They recommend with it so that they stay open and so wet as long as I need them to. So, well, let's paint with these Golden Open paints and see if they can get close to oil painting too. If the end result will look like an oil painting. And as you can see here, I already sketched another one of these eggs. Well, my eggs aren't perfect, are they? And let's get into the painting. So these Golden Open paints, they're nice and creamy, thicker paint. That thinner really helped to spread them out a little bit more and to blend them something a little bit more easily. And I noticed right away with these paints, they stay open, wet for a long time, even 2-3 days later on my palette. The paint was still not completely dried, but on the canvas, when you thin them a little bit, spread them out, they dried within about a day. The layer, what I painted here, was dry in a day, and you could paint over them again. Now, the idea of this whole exercise is to observe colors and to mix the right amount of colors with each other so that you get a convincing egg in color, and also make use of just a few colors so that you're limited and have to start thinking quite differently about your colors, and don't rely on a lot of colors but just a limited selection of colors, and still try to get a convincing color, as I'm trying to do here with the painting, a convincing egg color. And again, my egg kind of looks like a marble if it wasn't for the colors. So here's the final result of my egg. I'm done with the painting, the Zorn palette egg. Let's call it the Zorn egg. And I really enjoyed painting this with this limited palette. And let's compare it to the Sonja paint, the matte paint. Now the matte paint dried definitely a lot matter, but the Golden Open, they're not really shiny. I expected them to be more glossy than they are. They are somewhere in between, a bit satin, I would say. but I like the way they look and the way they work. Now, of course, we gotta compare this to Andrew's egg, because that's the whole purpose of these videos I'm making, to grow in my expertise of painting. And as you can see right away, his egg is a lot darker than mine, but that could also be the print and the lighting on the screen. So probably the egg in real life, I'm expecting it to be slightly lighter than it is. And you can see he's got more of an egg shape than I do. But I painted a different egg than him. I didn't paint the same egg. Here's my egg, and as you can see, it's in a different position, and it is a lot lighter than the egg that he painted. And I think my result was pretty nice. And I joined painting with the Golden Open. It was a good experience. Now on the canvas, as said, it dries reasonably quick. In a day it was dry, but on the palette, this palette has been laying here for 3 days. And as you can see, some of the paint even is still wet, like that yellow ochre. A bigger blob is still workable. The red and the black definitely aren't workable. Those were smaller blobs. They're solid, pretty much solid by now. So, but if you use bigger blobs of paint, it would stay open for quite a while. Now, compared to the Sonja, I think this paint works really well. Do I like it better? I'm not sure if I like it better. I think I like the idea of having to add your own gel and adding the ratio you like to the paint. But all in all, this was a great experience and a great lesson by Andrew.